I think I have a lot of faith in trusting my gut and knowing what's right for me, and then knowing I'm the type of person
So I'd created
that will work really hard to make it happen.
The dog, the cottage,
and if it doesn't happen,
salary,
I'll learn something from it.
The perfect man, the white picket fence and the children.
Welcome to
and so
Making
the first thing I
Change
would
with
say
Your
is
Money,
giving
a
myself permission
podcast
to
that
let
highlights
all of
the
that
stories
go,
and strategies
to
of women
allow
who experienced
my
a big life
to be
transition
orchestrated
and overcame challenges
rather than
as they
trying to control
redefined
what I
financial
thought it
success
should
for
be.
themselves. Now here's your host, certified financial planner. Welcome to
Laura
Making Change
Rotter.
with Your Money, a podcast
I'm
that
so
highlights
excited
the
to
stories and
have
strategies
as my
of
guest
women
today
who
Kathleen
experienced
Burns
a big life
Kingsbury.
transition and
Kathleen
overcame
is the
challenges as
founder
they
of
redefined
KBK Wealth
financial success
Connection.
for themselves.
She's the
Now,
host
here's
of
your
her
host,
podcast, the
certified
Breaking Money
financial
Silence
planner,
podcast.
Laura Rotter.
And she's an internationally published
I
author,
am so
speaker,
excited to have as my guest
consultant,
today,
and coach.
Andrea Leigh Austin.
She was named one of
Andrea
9
is the
amazing
co-founder
conference
of My
speakers by
Conscious
Investment
Wellness,
News, and
who
her
are
work has been
pioneers
featured
in the
in the New
Canadian
York Times,
consciousness and
the Wall
alternative
Street Journal,
wellness space.
PBS NewsHour,
Andrea is
Money
a former
Magazine,
CPA
Today
with
Money,
KPMG,
Forbes, and CNBC.
She specialized in corporate
Her
and personal
firm's mission
taxation,
is to empower women,
and she's currently
couples,
completing
and
her degree
families,
in metaphysics,
and the advisors who
including
serve
a
them,
PhD
to shatter
in
money
conscious
taboos
business ethics,
and communicate
as
more
she explores the
effectively
world
about
of
financial
sacred
matters.
finance
So,
and
welcome,
bringing
Kathleen,
love
to
back
the
into
Making
business,
Change with Your Money podcast.
and exchange.
Thank you very much, Laura.
Welcome,
it's an honor
Andrea, to
be
the
here
Making
and
Change
to be
with Your
breaking
Money
silence with you.
podcast. Oh, great.
Thanks, Laura. Excited
So,
to be here.
my first
I'm going to
question
start
that I
with
like
the
to ask
question
all
I
my
always
guests
start
is,
with, which
Kathleen,
is,
what was money
what
like
was
in
money
your
like
family
in your
growing
family
up?
growing up?
Ooh, I love that
that's a good
question.
question.
So money in my family growing
use the
up,
first word that
we
came
certainly
was
had
scarce.
enough of it, but it was very much focused
even
on
if
saving money,
there was,
being responsible
call it
with money,
abundance,
balancing
right?
the checkbook.
Decent home.
So I learned a
wonderful.
lot about
Money seemed
saving
to
money and
always be
being
a
financially
predominant-
responsible.
I'm gonna use
So
the
that's
word
not
issue,
a bad way to
right?
go when you're a kid.
Something
learning
that
lessons
was
around money.
either it
And
was more
Kathleen,
about
I'm just curious, was
there
that
wasn't
directly
enough,
communicated
or
to
you
you,
were
or you
in
watched
fear
your
for the
parents
next
do it?
paycheck,
I mean, how?
or it wasn't talked
Well,
about
given
at all.
my
So it's kind of
profession as a wealth
interesting, right, to
psychology
witness
expert,
how
negotiation
it
trainer,
wasn't a
and coach,
comfortable
I certainly
topic in the
have thought a
household,
lot
and
about that.
certainly
So
wasn't
I would say
personified as
that a
something
lot of
that
the
was
messages, especially around
easy
saving and
in the world.
frugality,
So what I'm hearing
were
is it wasn't
overt.
talked
I
about,
was
but
told,
even without it
that
being
saving
talked
money was
about, it
important.
was very
like a lot of young
present.
kids were given
Extremely
a piggy
present.
bank and told
Yeah,
that I would
I
save a
was,
portion of whatever
raised
I
in a
got.
single-parent
So there
household
was definitely
in the 70s
words
and 80s,
put to it.
when
There was also a
women
lot of
supporting their
actions,
children
not just
wasn't,
from my
I guess,
father and my
as common.
mother, but also
And
my Nana
funnily,
Mo,
my
who
mother
lived to
worked for a number of
102.
years in the banks,
And
which
she
makes
would
this
always
discussion
shop
even
at
funnier,
Filene's Basement
and
in
was a
Boston when
loans
there still was a
officer.
Filene's
Oh, that's
Basement. And for those who don't know,
fascinating.
that's a
So it was interesting
bargain
because I
discount
think,
place.
she tried
And
to go
so
through
all
a
of our
traditional
gifts that we
world
would receive from
trying
my
to make
Nana Mo
money to
would be from
provide for her
Filene's
children.
Basement, even
But
to
there
the
was always
point
an
where
underlying
when she would
fear
gift us like
that it could be
pajamas
gone
or
tomorrow,
underwear for Christmas,
is
you know,
what
those
I sense
responsible
now
granny
in
gifts,
hindsight.
they
I don't
would
think
be
I
marked
knew that at the
irregular.
time. I was a kid. Right?
And you said
So
children.
name brands
so
was
you
not
have a
something
sister
that
or
was
a
in my
brother?
house.
I have
It's
one
not something
sister.
that
Yep.
was valued.
And
Yeah, I
did
think it was
you
both. Their actions were pretty
assume
consistent
that you
with
would
what
go
they
on
said
to
around
get a
saving.
professional
I think
degree?
the
I mean,
big thing
your
that was
mother
left
was
out of
doing
my education
professional work.
really
So
had to do with
what was the assumption, if
how
anything, around
it was
education?
okay to be financially
Well, there was
successful.
no total
It
assumption in my
was
family
okay
around
to
education.
ask for money and
Interestingly, that's a great
negotiate.
question.
Ironically, of course,
I
that's what I
knew
end
out
up
of the
doing
gate
now
that I would
is
get a
helping
university
women
education.
and
That was an
advisors be
inner
successful
knowing.
and
That
talk about
wasn't
money and talk about their
personified
fees.
in
But
my
I really
family.
think that was
I've
not
always enjoyed education,
discussed.
but
And
I didn't know what I was
there were
going to
no
do with
actions
it.
around that
I
because
would
my
say
dad
my
was in the
driver
Navy, so he
at
got
the
paid what he
time,
got paid.
hence
And my mother
discussions
pretty
in
much
the
was a
future
stay-at-home
around
mom.
sacred exchange
So
and
interesting,
finance
Kathleen. Thanks for
was that
sharing.
I
And yes, we
swore
often
that I would
do
never be in
end
the
up
position
either
that my mother
pursuing
was.
things that our parents
So my
did, or,
driver
as you
was
said,
to
pursuing
get a
things that
higher
our parents
education,
didn't. It's interesting
complete
to
a
see which
degree,
way.
Yeah, I think I'm a
and
nice
make
blend
great money
between the two because
so
I
that
certainly am a
that could
natural
bring me
saver.
happiness.
So that has
So I
not
would say
gone
that was
away,
my
and I do
driver, not the
value
family. I think
that
I'm
part
probably
of
one
my
of the
money
first,
personality.
besides
So
my
can you
aunt,
share with
maybe,
our
who actually
listeners
had
I guess,
higher
first of
education
all,
my
was
family.
college
That's so
paid
interesting.
for
And you
by
grew
your
up in
family? Was
Canada?
that a
Mhm.
given?
Yep, City of
Yeah,
Toronto.
education was
So,
really
were
valued.
you
My mother
lucky
actually
enough to
was
get
a teacher and then a
an
librarian.
amazing Canadian
My
higher
dad had his
education? Right. I have
master's in
a friend who's
engineering,
Canadian
and like I
who
said, worked in
is
the military.
always ruining
So
the
I grew up
cost of
just knowing
private
I was going to
university in
college
the United
and knowing my
States
parents were paying for
and
college.
saying, I
Now, I
should have
say
raised
that
my
sitting
kids
here
in
many years
Canada.
later,
So yes, if
realizing
you're
how
living at
fortunate
home
I am.
and you have
But
the
in my
privilege
house,
of being
it
able
was
to go
just
to
a given.
university at the
So
same time,
that was
at the
something that they
time
saved
in the
for. Again,
80s,
saving
it wasn't
early on
that
for our
expensive.
educations, and they
So
put
nothing
both my
working
sister and I
an entire
through
summer and then maybe
undergraduate.
working
When it
through a
came
year
to my
didn't
graduate
help
education,
pay
because I have
for
a
your
master's in counseling
education.
psychology,
So I did. I went to the
paid for that
University of.
myself.
I
I never
started at the
asked.
University of Waterloo,
Pretty financially
one of the
independent, never
larger,
asked for
more
them to fund
prestigious
it.
for
But my
mathematics.
assumption was,
And then I
after
decided that
undergraduate, I
wasn't
was on my own.
my.
And how did you
my
fund that? I'm
drug of
curious.
choice.
Did you have
And then I ended up
jobs
at the
growing
University
up?
of Toronto.
Is that something
studying
you didn't
commerce
have
and
until you
economics, which is
graduated?
how I ended
What
up
was your
becoming a
relationship to
CPA.
work?
So
I actually
I wouldn't
started
say
working
huge
I think it
amounts
was
of debt,
15
like I've
or
seen
16.
in
I started
some
working.
of the
We
larger,
lived
more
in a
private
resort town,
universities.
also a military
I
town.
will give
So I
them
started
that.
working
However,
at like
if you
the local
choose to go
restaurant.
away to
I
a
then
university,
soon
then of
decided
course that
that
starts to
waiting on
drive things
people
up,
and being a
but
bus girl and
I
being
wouldn't
dirty
say
wasn't
it's
really for
significant.
me.
Right. I mean, now
although there's
obviously
nothing wrong
it's
with
not
that
the
work,
80s, and still,
believe it or not,
though,
at the time I was
clients
shy,
I
so it
work
was a little
with
bit hard for me.
it's
And I
$80,000
soon
a
got
year
a
for
job,
room and
believe it or
board
not, at the
for
local bank and started my
a lot
career
of private
in finance
universities
as a
in
teller.
the United States.
So,
And I think
yeah,
University of
I
Toronto, for
didn't even
example,
have
is
to
way
pay
less
for
than
my own
that,
books.
even
I feel
if
kind of
you're
bratty saying
Oh, it's way less. I have a
that money
20-year-old
went
son
to
right
a fun
now who's
account for
attending the
me.
leading
So all the
business
fun I
school.
had, I
one
had
of them
to
in
certainly
Canada,
fund myself.
and
But
his
in
tuition
terms of
is
education, it was a full ride. And
27,000
now being
a
married to
year
someone that didn't get a
plus
full
living,
ride, and
so it's
certainly
still
seeing what people are
significantly
coping
less.
with student debt
And so I'm
making these
super grateful
decisions,
for
even the
that
next
because it wasn't
generation, my sister's
onerous
kids, I
in any
realized how
way
fortunate
from
I
that
was that was
perspective.
the
And thanks for the
situation.
relativity.
yes,
I
it's
can
very
remind
true.
my children.
I thankfully was
Yes.
able. Well,
So
I got
I
a full
take it
ride,
you
and my
always had a
kids
facility
got a
with
full ride,
numbers. Is
and
that true? That
I
you
appreciate
Oh
that
my
they
God, I love
acknowledge
math
it, that
advocating.
they have friends in school.
Look,
who
I
are
was one of the
graduating or
nerdy kids on the
graduated with
math team
student
in high
loans,
school. And I did also
they
think I was going to
recognize
major in
and
math till I
acknowledge, which
realized
isn't
that it
always
had
the case,
morphed
that
into philosophy.
what a gift it was to
It
graduate
did.
without
That's what I got to university and I was like, wait a
so
second.
Kathleen, you said
This
you
morphed
then
into
went
something
and
I'm
got
not,
your
well, I'm not ready
master's
for.
in
So I totally
counseling?
understand the
You said?
Yeah,
change
this is
in
where it all
major.
goes awry, but all
And
makes
also
perfect
understand
sense,
the
many,
pull to
many years later.
mathematics. I mean,
So I
and
actually started
numbers.
out
In
as a
some ways, I
finance
thought,
major,
well,
graduated
maybe I grew
in
up with some
finance, and became
uncertainty in
a
life, and
FDIC
there was
bank examiner.
some
So I
certainty that
worked in the
numbers
Boston area. It was during the
promised in
savings and
some
loan
way.
crisis
Oh, I'm with you.
of the
I totally
late
agree.
80s, early
100%. I think
90s.
that's even
And
how I ended up
I worked in
studying
safety and
taxation
soundness. And
in
so
my
while I was
latter
doing
years,
that, I very quickly
I know
realized
people
that,
don't
well,
necessarily
I
think
liked
of that
banking
as
and finance, and
certainty,
I
but
liked
there
money.
is some level of
I didn't
certainty within the
necessarily like
construct
that I
of
couldn't
that
help
profession.
somebody. So in a role of an
And
auditor, traditionally,
again,
you're
it's a
really
profession most people
noticing
don't
what they're
love and
doing wrong,
understand. So
bringing
I
it to
just
their
thought that was even
attention,
more
and there
fun
isn't any coaching or
to
counseling
try
or
and
anything like
figure it
that.
out.
And
It's
so
funny
what
that you
I
attributed
did
certainty to
was,
taxation,
because I was kind of
certainly
geeky in
again here in the
education, the value
States,
of
the
mine as
tax laws
well,
are always
I
changing,
decided
which
to
I
take some
think is
night
what makes it
classes
sort of
at
interesting
a
and
college
creative.
right
I
next
found
to Lesley
tax
University.
planning is
And I
one
took
of
it
the
in
more
psychology
interesting
basically
things
for
I do
fun.
as a
And then I
financial
realized,
advisor.
wait a second, I
So
like
I've
my
been
classes
enjoying
better
learning
than I
about
like
that.
my
So
day job.
you went to
So I ended up
university, you
switching
studied economics,
careers from being
and
in
did you
banking and
immediately
finance to
then
being a
do a
clinical
specialty in
counselor,
taxation?
which is a
Or
huge shift.
what was your
And from a financial
trajectory after
standpoint, you go
school?
from making
So
this
I
much to
instantly
making
got a
this
job
much.
after second year university with,
But my heart was
in
full,
those
and I
days it was
loved what I
called Pete
did.
Marwick Thorne. Now
Eventually,
today
you flash
KPMG.
forward
So I
15
started
years
with
of that
them when I was
career,
20.
and I got
Great
tired of
job. Knew I
under-earning
wanted to be a
and being
CA. So
burnt
there's a
out.
certain
And,
trajectory
being a
you have
counselor
to
is not the
follow.
easiest
But
of
I knew
professions.
quickly I
I
wasn't going to
loved
be
my
an
clients,
auditor.
but
That was
it's
a given.
hard to do over a long period of time.
But you have to do
and so
auditing.
that's when
is
I
that
discovered,
correct?
oh,
Yes,
this thing
for
called money
2.5.
psychology. It has all the
might be
finance
4
in
years.
it,
I'm
and it
losing
has all
track, but
the
I think it's only
helping
a couple
people
years.
and helping people figure
Then
things
you
out
don't
and
have to do
behavioral
it anymore,
change.
I'm
And
told.
That's when
But I
created
knew
my
I wanted
company,
to do
KBT Wealth
tax out of
Connection,
the
and the
gate.
rest
So
is
once I
history.
got the
Wow.
accumulated
So that's a
hours and
lot
got
to
the
take in.
accreditation
Is it
and
okay if I
passed
ask you a couple
maybe
of
equivalent of a
questions?
bar exam. or
absolutely.
We call
First
them
of all, Kathleen, I'm just
five
curious.
final exams.
You said you
I
liked
knew
banking,
I was gonna
that
do
you were
tax. So that
attracted to
shift
banking and
happened
finance. How did you
fairly
know that?
quickly,
Like what?
which then became another,
So when
3,
I was a
6,
little
7
girl,
years of education.
two things. When I
inside
was a
of
little girl,
your job,
I had a cash register. It was my
to also grow
favorite
and
toy.
morph
Absolutely
that aspect
loved my cash
of your
register.
credentials.
And I loved the
So that was an
sounds it
intriguing
made, you know, when you
journey.
hit
And
on
what I
the
discovered is I
buttons.
liked teaching it.
I loved the
probably more
ka-ching.
than
I
practicing
loved
it.
making
So
change.
I started
I loved actually
teaching
touching money. So
other
all of that
accountants
kind
tax.
of
I started
is
teaching it
part
at
of
the
who I
University of
was
Toronto.
and when I was
coming
born.
back
I don't
to
think that
those
was
kinds
anything
of
that I was
things
taught.
to
It's
keep me
just kind of, I
engaged
really enjoyed
in
it.
an educative way as
And
well
when
as a
we would go to the
practical way.
bank,
So
I just
Andrea,
really was an enamored.
as I'm
in the
hearing you
bank.
say
I
that
also
you
had an uncle
enjoyed the
who was the vice
teaching
president
more
of the
than the
bank. I don't know
practice,
how
it's
much
clear
that
that you
influenced me or
have
didn't influence me.
skills
But
beyond
eventually,
just
I
a
got a
facility with
job. I
numbers.
think I mentioned as a teller,
I
and
would
it
assume
was like the
there's
grown-up
some
cash
facility
register.
with people.
And
Can you
so
speak to what drew you to the
really loved what I
teaching
did.
of
I loved
taxation?
I mean,
being
I
a
think I
teller
always
for my
had that
summer job. I
genetically.
mean, I made a
I
lot
even
less
taught
than you
swimming
could at the,
my way through
restaurant,
university,
but I really
mostly
enjoyed
because
it. And I
loved
thought I would
water,
always be
right?
in banking and
So
finance.
there's a bit of a
So
passion
it's
of
kind of just, I'm an
finding
intuitive
something I
person.
love
And so I
and
intuitively
then
just kind of
expressing that
knew that this was
love
kind of a cool
to
place for me to
others.
be.
So that's how I see the
Interesting.
correlation, because I
And
really do
I'm also curious
enjoy
because
human
first of
connection.
all, I've
I
interviewed
find the
another guest
way
who
that
also
we
remembers
learn
loving
super
a cash register
fascinating.
toy.
I love to take
Maybe I'll make
things
an
that people
introduction.
are afraid of, or they're
We could
in
get cash registers
fear of,
anonymous, right?
and show
And
them
then
and
the
teach
other
them
thing
the
is,
joy
I've interviewed a number of guests who
learning that. And I
have
can see that
sisters.
thread
You know,
now
they
right
grew up
through my
girls in the
entire
family
career,
and
right down to teaching adults
felt that that
how to
was a
even in my
reason
20s,
that they
right? Popping them in a
chose
pool
what were
and watching them
male-dominated
how they
careers
responded to
because the
water, 'cause I
message they
loved
received,
water.
not seeing a
So
difference
that's,
with
I would say, the
brothers,
commonality.
was you can do anything
I'm
and go
not,
into any field.
I'm
Does
not
that
somebody who
resonate with you?
completely likes to
The
live
message
in
about you can do
isolation with
anything
numbers,
and gender
like
was
many
not a
accountants
factor
do.
was
I
certainly sent in
definitely
my family
didn't choose
as
the
a message.
standard
I
in my
don't think
closet
overtly. I
career,
think it was more
like many of
through
my
the
fellow
actions. My
accountants,
dad,
and I'm not
and I had
knocking
older
it
parents.
at
My
it
parents
all. It
didn't have
just
me
didn't
until I
nurture
was 35. They had my sister
So
at 30.
I often would
And
choose even
back
unusual
then that was
roles
unusual.
within
Nowadays
the
it's not unusual.
organization.
And so my
Right down
father is
to
certainly a
project
traditionalist,
management
and
business
he
development
would
and
do a
all
lot
that
of
kind of
things
stuff
that would
your
traditionally be
standard
considered
tax accountants
female
shy
roles
away
in
from,
terms of like
because
taking
I've
us to the
always kind of
doctors
had
when we
that
were sick, or
people element
cooking
or that
dinner on a
personal
holiday,
connectional
or
element that called me.
he would do
Which
all,
is
in fact,
such
my
a
favorite
wonderful
gender role thing
combination
was
of
when I
having
was
both
going to prom,
technical
I needed a purse,
acumen
and it
in a
became this big
field
thing between my
and
mother and
then
I,
the
who kind of butt
heart,
heads a lot.
the
And so he finally
actual
said, I will make you a purse.
relationships and
And he sat
ability to
down before I
connect.
went to prom and made me a little
Certainly,
silk
I've seen
purse
that in
to go with
my
my
own life.
outfit.
So
So,
how long did you
so there was
actually work as an
definitely,
accountant,
my parents were
or
team players.
teaching
And the message
other
was no
accountants?
matter
So I was with
what your gender,
KPMG
you can do
22
anything you want
years.
to do.
Wow.
My sister went into farming and
little
I
bit
went
of
into
time.
banking.
And so
Well,
then how
7
did
years in
you
operations,
declared yourself an
and say the first
introvert
2
when you were
years,
younger?
whatever the
How did an
math is, which is
introvert
Freudianly
decide to
funny,
go
given about
into?
15 years.
Are all introverts
In
shy? I mean, I
tax,
definitely was
which kind of
incredibly
makes
shy,
sense.
but I don't think, I think I'm
So
on the edge of
after the
introvert,
birth of my
extrovert. I come
second
across on
son,
these things
I
as an
knew I
extrovert,
wanted
but
to
I
shift
think
again.
I'm
to
truly
give
a
myself
blend.
more space,
But I was an
and I
incredibly,
wasn't ready to
incredibly
leave the
shy
organization.
child. So
And so
your
then I
question
got to
again?
use some of those more interpersonal
It sounds like a
acumen
very big
skills,
transition
and
to
went
leave
inside and
banking
started oversighting
and move to
administration
counseling. And part of
operations
it is I'm
for the
just
last
wondering
7
about
years
that
of my
personality
career there,
trait that you.
which
It was a big
super fun,
struggle
especially because
in my
I
20s
knew the people,
in a
I
variety of
knew the
ways to figure out who
organization,
I
and I had
was,
this
what I
whole
wanted
other
to
skill set
be.
that wanted
And I've
to be
historically,
developed and
early
played
on,
with.
even
So
though
I
I
did
had this
that,
rebel
I think after the
inside me,
birth
I
of
also
Katie.
was
So
compliant.
I think my
I very
timeline is
much wanted
correct.
to make my
I might
parents
be a little bit
happy.
off, but
Was
that's
the
the
straight A
gist.
student,
So
that whole deal.
when you stepped,
And
I
they
mean, I
did
wouldn't
not say
think
this,
going
but I
to
think
administration would be
thought the
stepping back,
expectation
but that's what you're
was to get a
implying, that
secure
it took
job
less hours, or was there
to get
less
something that was
travel?
reasonable.
Yeah, I would
And
say
I had wanted
less
to be an engineer
hours,
for like a blip
less demands,
until I realized,
right?
because my
Because
dad was
I'd
an
made my
engineer,
way up
until I
enough
realized,
in the
oh, I don't like anything about
organization
engineering.
that
And
I
so I
felt like
picked
I'm either
banking
going
and
to have to
finance.
move
And
into
then
a position
what I started to
where
discover in my 20s,
partnership or
as I
senior
did my own
partnership would have
work,
been sitting on the
was
table.
I'm not sure
And
this
I
is
knew I
really
didn't
me.
want to
I think
take
this
that
is what
direction.
I think people
And
want
so
from me.
I get bored.
And
easy.
so when I
Might
started
be
to
the
get in touch with
transparency
what
I'm realizing
I
now
really
as I
wanted
deliver
to do,
this.
I've always been a hard
And
worker.
so
I've always,
I wanted to do something
whatever I've
different.
done, I've been incredibly
I
driven.
wanted to see how
But
the
I
organization
realized
ran.
that
I'd
I
never
wanted
been
to help
part
people.
of that.
I also had
in
an
the CA
experience in
world,
my
it might be
life where I
considered a
was
step
helped
back. That's why
with some
you're
mental
picking
health
up on it.
issues and wanted to give back.
Because the
And so I think
traditional
that certainly came
trajectory
into
for
play.
most accountants would
my
be
parents,
partnership
especially
or CEO
my dad,
or
was very
CFO
supportive
positions.
while I was trying to figure out how to
And
make
I
this
wasn't
jump.
choosing
But
that.
it was
There was
scary. I
something
mean, you
inside
go
of
from
me
being
that
in
went,
your mid
don't go
20s,
there.
making more than
And
a lot
so
of your
I've
colleagues
also
with
learned to
great
listen
government
and follow
benefits.
that.
Another very, very important skill to
I'm going to be a
actually
therapist and
be
make,
inside your
under minimum
body
wage.
and
It's not the
listening to the
easiest transition.
signals
I
it's
did at the
giving
time
you.
start dating my
As
now
you
husband,
look back,
and I
Andrea,
think,
can you
his
think about
encouragement and
what
knowing
it
that I wasn't a
was
starve
about
also
that
helped as
career
well.
path
I think
that
that's an
you
incredibly
weren't
brave
interested in?
decision.
Oh, easily. Way
I'm
too much
curious
pressure.
before we go
Constant
on,
focus on
Kathleen.
money.
Does faith
And
play any
expansion,
role? And you can
and
define
not
From a
faith
rain,
however you
I'm
want.
sorry,
From a rainmaking point
Not
of view,
in
what was
terms
the
of
focus
a,
on
what does
money?
rainmaking mean?
religion per
Bringing in
se.
new clients.
I think
Absolutely.
I have a lot
And
of
I understand
that
part of the
trusting my gut
organization,
and
but
knowing
had no
what's right for
desire
me, and
to
then
do that.
knowing I'm the
And
type
it
of
didn't feel
person
exciting. Like
that
it
will
didn't
work
turn
really
me
hard
on,
to make it
right? It was
happen.
like,
And if it doesn't happen,
I guess
I'll
I
learn
could do
something from
that.
it. Now,
And then
certainly
I guess
that's
that's what
easier
we're
to say
supposed
sitting
to do.
here in my late
But
50s
it doesn't
versus in
turn
my
me on.
20s. But
And I
I
knew
also
that.
made
That
another
sort of the
leap. So I
spark had
became a
died.
counselor and worked in
Yeah,
counseling
that's what it
psychology,
sounds
had my
like.
own practice,
and
wrote
you
a
had a
book,
lot going on
started to move up the ranks,
other
and then
areas
decided
of
I
your
wanted
life.
to create
It
my own
also
company
sounds
like I have today. So I
certainly
had to do
raising
another big jump
Two
to a totally
boys
different field. I
takes
just think I must get
time
bored. And then I'm like,
and
I gotta do something new.
psychic
And-
energy,
and you
in
really
addition
did
to physical
develop,
energy.
if you will. You're one of the
I'm
pioneers
curious, Andrea, were there
in
other
the
women
intersection
at your
of counseling
level
and money.
at
That's sweet to
KPMG while
say.
you were there?
Yeah, I didn't know it. I mean, at the time, it was a
yeah,
newer
for sure.
field. I think about
I had
Ted
some
Klum
great friends,
and Rick
great
Taylor
alliances.
were the folks that I
Some of
reached out to
them,
when I started doing this.
more
But
senior,
yeah, I
some
had
of
someone
them
else say
less.
that the other day at a
It kind of
conference, and I was
varied.
like,
But
wow,
I
that
would
both
say
is
for the most
such
part,
an
quite a
honor,
number
Laura,
of
and
women
also like,
in
wow,
the
I'm at the
accounting
stage
field.
where I was a
Not all of
pioneer.
them partners. I will say.
I'm just
still
wondering what
traditionally
skills
at
of
that
yours. You've
time
already
more
said that you're intuitive,
male-dominated.
that you have
Certainly,
drive, you're a hard
not for the
worker.
organization's
What
lack of
other
trying.
skills? Because
I
I'm
will
thinking
give them that.
it takes a bit of
But for me,
creativity
not
to
enough
say,
space
well,
to necessarily
I'm gonna
perform,
create
let's
my
call it
own
that
path.
way, in that way.
What other
and
skills
still
or
have
traits do you think
the life
you
that
brought?
I wanted?
Yeah, I
I
can
am
understand
incredibly
that, and that's why I'm
strategic.
actually
So
surprised.
I think, and I didn't
that
know
there
that I was
were
strategic, but I have
other
always been strategic.
women, as
I
you
also have been
yes,
incredibly
not
good
necessarily
at
taking the partner
surrounding
position.
myself with people.
So,
Whether that's
can you share with
networking,
our
like with Ted
listeners
Klum in
how
the
you
beginning,
went from 22
emailing
years
him and
as a
saying, "Hey, I'm doing
CPA
this," and him
to
saying,
now
"I was nobody,
co-founding
right?
a
I mean,
company
I was a person, but I was
that
nobody in the
has
field." And he said,
my
"Oh, come by the conference. You can
conscious
stop by free, and you
wellness
can watch
in the
my seminar." I
title.
mean, he was so generous. But I just have a little bit
I'll
of,
try to give you
is
the
that moxie?
shortest
I'm not sure
version
what that is.
possible.
And
I think
also, I
for
have also
most of
gotten
my life,
support.
I've been a
So
bit of a
I
seeker
have
in
worked
my
with
own
different
way,
coaches over
you know,
time, whether
inside
it's a
the
speaking coach, a
organization
business
and
coach.
outside.
Just started,
And
just
I
finished
hit
up
a
with a
pinnacle
marketing
point in my
strategy
career where I knew
consultant
I needed
coach.
to
I
shift
just
something.
believe that
And I
we
didn't
can't do
know
it
what that
alone.
was. I was
But if I
doing
have an idea and I have a sense
burnout
of what I
thing.
want, if I can
I
put the
actually
right
had an out-of-body
people in place to
experience
support
in my
me
40s
and figure it out, I will
where
do
I
it.
hovered
And I
above my
also, the last
body
thing is I
on
work
the
better for
ceiling
myself than
in
I
the
work
Turks
for
and
other people.
Caicos. Gorgeous place. If
It's
you've
an
not been.
important thing to know about yourself.
And
Yes,
I
I
do feel
actually
like
get more
my
done
soul
in my
yelled
own
down at
company
me
than
and
I
said,
would
"Are
get
you
done if I
happy?"
worked for a corporation.
And
I
this
do think
message
if
had been
I,
coming
you know,
in
at this
various
point in my
different
career, this
forms
probably won't happen. But if
for
I
a
had to go
number of
back and work for the
years,
corporation,
right
I
from
think
my yoga
with the
teacher
maturity
yelling
and the
at me one
education
day
and the
with
emotional
love because
intelligence,
she
I would be
was just
fine.
trying to get
But
through.
it was not my jam.
And I
Plus, I'm
realized
quick.
there was an
Entrepreneurs can be really
incompleteness
quick when
within
you work for
myself.
organizations
And
or
I didn't know what that
corporations.
looked
Things
like,
are
and I didn't
really really
know
slow in
what
my
that
head.
felt like.
Yes,
but I knew
again, back
something
you need to
shift.
understand
So
the politics
after
and how
a
to
long
get other
whatever,
people on board
I
and
made
not to
a
move
conscious
too
decision
quickly.
to walk
Which is a
away from my
wonderful
career.
skill. Wonderful. I
took
really
a
admire
1-year
it in other
sabbatical.
people.
I was going to do 3
Kathleen,
months,
can you
and I had a
define
girlfriend yell at me
strategic?
with
Because
love
you've
and
named
said,
that as one of
"You
your
need a year. 3 months is not long
strengths.
enough for you to
As you
really reflect
imagine,
on what you
well,
want."
what does it mean to
So
you?
I figured it out.
Well, I guess what,
Financially negotiated
I
with my
think
now
about
ex-husband, but husband at the time,
where
and
I
said,
think
"Okay,
about what
I'm
my
up for this
heart wants
ride."
me to do.
So I think
And I
the
think
first thing is
about
it took conscious choice.
where's
that I
the
wanted
business
to
side
change,
of
which
that?
is funny, given
Like,
the name
is there
of
a
our
market for
organization
that?
now.
Where could
But
I
I
be
knew something needed
successful?
to
Where am I
shift.
going to
So I
make the most
started to
difference? Where am I going to have an
navigate
impact?
experimenting
And
with
then
different
I
roles, different ideas. I
strategically
gave
think
myself
about
permission
what's
to
going to build me
start
credibility
looking
in
at the
that
world
space.
differently.
Who do I need to meet?
And so what happened
What
was
types of activities
several
do I need
years
to be doing?
later,
And
my
then
now
I build it. It's,
existing
I would
gorgeous
love to
divine
say I'm a
partner
strategic person and it's all
showed
in a
up
big
at
strategic
the
plan.
Toronto
and
Yoga
it's,
Conference.
I'm not, I could look
on
like that
April
on paper,
Fool's
but I'm
Day
not like that.
2012.
But I really think it's
It was
strategically
like
thinking,
divine
I'll give you an
connection.
example.
We met each other
So
in the
when
first
I
10
started my
minutes
company,
of
KBK Wealth
200
Connection, in
vendors. What were the
2007. So I
probabilities?
had been
And there
in
was
counseling
something that he
psychology,
was
had my own
sharing
private
that
practice.
sparked
And at that
something
point
inside of me
knew I
that
was a
I
little
can
burnt
now
out from
explain.
healthcare
I
and wanted
could
to do
not
something
back then.
different.
And I
When
just
I
wanted
sat
to
down and
explore
thought
it.
about what's
So
the
I
intersection
took some
between
time
what I love
exploring
doing,
it.
which is
I
empowering women,
volunteered to
and
work with my skill
where's
sets
the
in him
business
for 6
opportunity?
months because I knew I
Given my
was
banking and
seeking to
finance
do
background, I
something
thought
differently.
banking and
I
finance.
just didn't know what
And
it
then I
was.
thought, instead of
And
going
that
out to
took,
the women and empowering them
conscious
directly,
choice again on my
strategically,
part
I'm
to
going to
let
go out
go
and talk
and
to
surrender
the
and
men
allow
because the
things to
industry
happen
is
around me
85% men.
to see
And so if I
what
can
the
reach the
universe would
men
bring
and
me.
help them do a better job
And so I made a
advising women,
choice
then
in
I can make the big
2012
difference I want to
to
make in
spend
the
time
industry.
getting
So
to know him and the
that is a very
organization
strategic thought, as
that he was
opposed to just
working
my
with at the
heart really
time,
wants
so
to
I could
empower
better
women,
understand
in
what
my
they
mind.
were up to.
Thank you.
in the
That's very
world.
helpful. So thanks for
And
sharing
what they
that
shared
definition.
made a whole lot more
So
sense
Kathleen,
to me
now of
than
course,
anything I'd
communicating
ever heard
about
before.
money, right? I
And
just
so
saw an
I used
article
my
in the Wall
auditing
Street
skills.
Journal about
You can
having a
interview
money
him at any
date
point. He said, I am
with your
exceptional.
spouse. So
And
can you
I
share
grilled him for
your not
hours
only
upon hours
philosophy,
upon
but
hours.
your
Like,
the
what
way
are you
you give
doing? Why are you
advice
doing
for
it? And it all made sense to me.
couples
Which I
to
thought was
communicate
interesting
about
because it's
money,
not like
which,
that
as you
made
know,
kind of
is
sense
not
I'd
an
learned
easy thing
anywhere
to do.
else.
So breaking money
silence.
silence is what I call it. And breaking money silence is
that birthed
defined
a
as that
new
uncomfortable
direction.
feeling that many of us
knew
get
that
when we talk
whatever
about
he was
finances with other
sharing
people.
had been led to
That
share
could be
was
a
in
romantic
alignment
partner,
with who
that could
I
be your
was
kids, your
and my
aging
core
parent, it
beliefs.
could be your boss at work, it could be your
And I
clients if
thought,
you're
why not?
self-employed.
Why not give this
It
a
covers
shot
a vast
and see where it
array of
goes?
financial conversations.
In
And while it
hindsight,
may
I
include
never
the numbers,
imagined
it
where we
often
are today.
includes how we think and
But I was
feel
willing to let
about
go
money,
and
what
say
it
yes and
represents.
just allow
So it's more the
things to
psychology of
happen,
money.
which is the bipolar
And
opposite of what you're
in
taught.
terms of breaking money silence, and I'll get to some advice for couples
But
in a
I've
minute,
always
but in
also
terms of breaking
had
money
that
silence,
innate knowing,
I
and
had been in the financial services
nurturing
industry
inside
as a
myself,
speaker
right?
and a
Like, I don't believe
consultant and
my
a writer
choices
for a
in my
number of years.
past career
And what I
or
noticed is that
mistake
financial
or not a
advisors,
direction I
financial
should not have
planners
gone. I don't
wanted to
ever feel
engage
that.
their clients
They
in
are
more
just
meaningful
part of a
conversations.
skill set or an
And
orchestration that
clients had
allows me to
no
come
idea
into alignment
that advisors
with
did this
myself
or
when
wanted
I'm
to
here
do it,
today.
but they wanted to talk more
And
about
so
money
that's
and how
sort
they
of
felt about
how,
money.
on
And
some
so
level, in the
when
short
I
story,
sat down to write the outline for
became
my book,
who
Breaking
and
Money
what we're doing
Silence,
today.
it was a
Thank you.
long
So
time. So it was a
what
couple
I've
of
heard you
years
say very
percolating in my
much
head.
resonates
But then it was New
with
Year's
my
Eve,
experience
and I
of
just sat
life,
down and I
which
wrote out the
is
outline.
right.
And the
We're
idea
taught
was, how do I
that
write
we're
a book
supposed
that's
to
going to be a
carve out
bridge
this
between
path
financial
for ourselves,
advisors
and it
and their
starts
clients
with
that
certain
help each of them
degrees,
talk more
and
openly
then
and
the
honestly
entry
about
level
money with each other,
jobs, and
so
the
they
career
can be
path that's
healthier,
almost like a
advisors can be more
staircase,
financially successful
and
and add
then
value,
we
and I
confront
think clients can be
life,
more financially successful
which
and
it
happier.
may be
And so
trite,
when it
but
comes
the
to
only
couples, I
constancy
think
in
one of
life
the
is
things that
change.
happens is we just
And
fall
actually
into
just
our roles and we don't
recently
really think
quoted in
about how we
something
want
I
to do this
wrote
thing called money.
that
So I
a
love
woman who had
when you
said
mentioned a
that
money date.
she
I
had
love that
originally
idea of a
seen
money
life
date
again as a
because
chessboard, but then
sitting
she
down and
realized
having
that
a
it's
conversation
a
about, as a
painting.
couple, how
You
are we
just
going to do
let
this
it
thing called money?
evolve.
Right now, I am
And
coaching
perhaps it
newlyweds on how to
takes a
have that
little bit of
conversation, which is
life
so
to be
sweet
able
and
to
wonderful
look
because they're
back
so
and
early on in their
recognize
relationship and they're
that
younger.
we have
But
evolved
if
in
you
ways
are
we
in a
never could have
relationship or
anticipated.
you're older,
I
it doesn't
would
matter
love
when you
to
start.
try to
It's
get more
deciding
insight
I'm going to
in
spend some
some
time
bigger,
talking about what I think and
almost
feel
vaguer
about money,
statements. I
finding
love
out
that you
what my
said
significant
gave
other
yourself
thinks and feels
permission
about
to
money, and
start
instead of judging
looking
each other,
at
we're
the
going to
world
just learn from
differently.
each other.
But
So that's
Andrea,
kind
can you
of
share
what I
what
think
that means
couples
to
need
you?
to do. earlier on would be
for
great,
sure.
but
I
it's
think
never
the
too
first
late.
thing is
It's
to
such
give myself
important
permission
work,
to get
Kathleen,
outside
and
my
I,
box.
I
right?
came into this
So I
industry,
created
second
a
career
box,
for me after
the
many
house,
years on
the
Wall
dog, the
Street,
cottage,
and
6
came
digit
to my
salary,
life
the
transition
perfect
through mindfulness
man,
practices.
the
And I
white
really
picket fence and
wanted
children.
to be,
And
if
so
you
the
will, a
first thing I would
yoga
say is
teacher
giving
for
myself
money. I
permission to
took
let
for
all of that
granted
go,
all
to
the
allow
numbers
my
oriented
life
things,
to
having
be
been involved in
orchestrated
financial markets
rather
for
than
so long.
trying to
But
control what I thought
I
it
remember
should be.
when I was at a conference and
So
everybody
it's very
was
different
taking, I'm
right
going to go to
now,
the session on
approaches,
investments.
right, to
And I went to the
letting
sessions.
life
I think it was
come to you.
led by
So
Ted
I would say
Klantz on
that's the
deep
most
listening.
significant.
Yeah. Yep.
I think the
That to
second
me was
element
where
is
I
to
wanted to, and in many
explore
ways,
and
continue to put
understand
my efforts,
what life
because
really means
I think
to
creating
me.
a safe space
And
for
when I
people
met
to
my
have
partner in
conversations about
2012, he was the
money. A
first
client
being that
recently
I'd ever
said to
met
me,
that openly talked
I
about
never knew my husband's
love,
money history. I never knew
specifically
the messages he
unconditional
grew up
love,
with. And thank you
how
for,
that will impact
having
humanity.
a space where we could hear that
And
together.
that
And
day,
that
when
being
we
said,
had
it's
that
just,
conversation,
it's not
it was in a
easy
park.
because we each
I
grow
had a
up with
sense
our
that
own
what he spoke
ideas
was
that
truth.
are communicated.
And I couldn't
It's not
explain.
easy, but one of the
And
things that I'm
so
very hopeful
I
about
would
is
say
there
the
is one
last 11
statistic out
years
there
has
that
been
71%
an
of millennials
exploration, a more
agree
deep
with the statement that our
exploration, the
society would be
concepts of
healthier
unconditional
if we
love,
talked more
what that
openly and
means,
honestly about money.
and then how
So I really feel like the millennials
can
and then Gen
actually
Z,
apply that
while the stigma's
in
still there,
this
they might say
reality.
it's done, but
What
what I see is
beginning
it's
to
still
better
there in certain
understand is
aspects, especially when
most
it
of
comes
what
to like
we've been
salary
taught
negotiations
is
and
conditional love.
couplehood
It
and a lot of
has
those things.
hook, lines,
However,
expectations,
the idea
all
that they
these
know
things.
it's healthy
And
to
so
do,
we're
as opposed to
constantly
you look at like my
seeking
parents
love,
or
but
even
doing
my
it through
generation. I'm a
condition.
very old
And
Gen
so
Xer,
this
almost
exploration,
boomer.
even psychologically,
And
for me,
we were just taught
made a
you
whole
just
lot
don't
more
talk about it.
sense
So
than anything
even in a
else
family where we talked
that I
about
had
savings,
read. And so there's a
we
deeper
never talked about our
philosophical
thoughts and
part
feelings about money
that
or
I
what we
gave
thought about
myself
wealthy people or poor
permission
people
to
or
explore
what we thought about
and
financial success. I mean,
explore
that would have
that
been
in a
unheard
way
of.
that
So I
comes
do have
more
a lot of
into
hope for future
alignment
generations in
with
really
my belief
busting through
systems,
this
my inner
money
knowing,
talk taboo once
not
and for all.
necessarily
And I
projecting
hope that
on
your
other
hope
people,
is
but
correct. I
finding
look at the
something
next
that made more
generation.
sense to
So
me,
my kids are sort of at
than
the younger
anything else I
end
had
of
been
their
taught
cousins
before.
who are now
And
married
these
and
philosophies so
in
resonate with
homes
me.
with
And I'm
children.
also
And
so aware of
there's
how
nothing wrong with division
they're
of labor in my own
intellectually
family.
appealing to
I'm the money
grasp
person,
and harder
but I see
to
it carrying
actually
on to the next
bring
generation
into
that
your life
the husband's
because
in charge.
there is such a deep
They don't know what's being saved,
that
what's
I
being
need
spent.
to
I
earn
bought
love
books for women,
through being
Manisha.
financially
Oh, I love her
successful,
books.
through being
I've given them the books.
successful as
I don't know
defined
if
by
they
our
look at it.
culture,
It's like, I'm
and
busy. I'm raising the
to
kids.
actually
I'm getting
sit
them to
with the
school.
fact
I don't
that
know. And
you
he
are
talks to
loved
the
as you
broker
are
or,
now is
I'm not
easy
interested in going to
do.
the meetings. And
I also heard you say letting life
so
come to you,
I
and
work.
I wrote it down.
Yeah, no, that is
because
that's a
I
place
heard
of
the
concern. And one of
corollary,
the
which
things,
is
I have a book called How to Give
letting
Financial
life
Advice to
live
Couples.
through
And one
you.
of the things that I
if
talk
you
about in
see
there
that
is I think advisors
as your role,
who are
not
more
to
financial
get that
planners,
next
maybe just not
promotion or buy
investment
the
folks,
bigger
but
house
should
or drive the
be
BMW,
requiring
but
joint meetings.
you know,
even though
if
it's
you
hard to schedule and it
imagine
might be annoying, it's
that
just
you are
really, I
put
think,
on
so
this
important and
earth
ultimately protects
to
them and
let
their
life
business during times of
experience
transition.
itself
I
through
also
you.
think
Would you
couples need to
drag
be
yourself out
educated,
of bed
as
to a
you're
job
trying
you
to do with some
every
of the people in
day
your
at
family
7 a.m.?
about the
No.
risks of not being involved.
So
Doesn't
I
mean you have to
find
love
that
like looking
an
at charts
important
and graphs.
concept to
But
keep
you
in
do
mind.
need to know
And,
who your advisor
hope I'm
is, where
passing
your
that on
money
to my
is. You
children.
need to
I'm
know
sure
the
I'm not.
basics. And
I
if you
get
work
it.
with a good advisor, that person should
So,
be able
Andrea, can you
to ask you what's
share
important for you to
how
talk
this
about
is
and put
actually
your items on the
something
agenda as
that
well.
you and your
So
partner
very true.
are
Kathleen, I know
teaching
you talked about
others?
negotiating
I would say first we're
as
teaching it
part
by
of
living it.
this
So
knowledge and
very
empowerment. Can you
much
speak
because
to that
of our
as
backgrounds.
a
So
woman
he was
who
a computer
herself
architect, right?
has her
So
own business?
we
And I
both
know
have
talking about fees
traditional,
is
let's
not
call
easy
it
for
standard
me.
templated
Yeah,
lives.
it's not easy for
We
a lot of
both
us. So you know how I
stepped into
reinvent myself
surrendering
every
and
once in a while.
allowing
So I'm not doing
life
anything
to
drastic.
to flow
But
through us.
since
I
I got
would say
off
by
the road
living it,
speaking during the
but what
pandemic,
also
I
showed up
started to look at
was
what's the next thing I
tools
want to do that I want to drill
to
down in. That relates
assist,
to money psychology and all
for
that we've
those
been
that
talking about.
choose
And that
this
is empowering women
to
to
help,
negotiate, to ask
the
for their true
subconscious let
value,
go.
and to feel really great about it.
A
So
lot
you
of
can
what
ask for your
we're
true value
running
and then
right
feel
now
really not great
are
about it. So the
programmed
idea is
beliefs.
for us to become
Many
more
of them are
comfortable.
not true
And,
for us.
in terms
And
of
so what
negotiation,
came
I think
along
there's
this
two
journey for
important
both of
pieces.
us
One
was a
is
number
there certainly
of
are the
tools,
skills we need to learn and the
hence my conscious
strategies, and,
wellness,
there's books upon
that
books and
we
training programs on that.
experienced, that we
And we need
experimented
to
with
also
on
understand our
ourselves.
negotiation
We watched
mindset.
and
Like when we
witnessed
think about
the
it,
change
Laura,
in
or think about it
ourselves
for
and
yourself.
others as we
Like when you say, I
traveled
really don't like
mostly
that part.
Canada,
Like, what is it
and we
about
shared them with
negotiating
other
that you don't
people
like?
who
And what
were
did you
also
learn about
seeking
negotiation growing up
some
that may
level of
be
change
hindering you
to
or
be
making it
able
uncomfortable now?
move.
Those are great
I love the way
questions.
you articulated it,
Ask,
to
right? I know a
allow
lot of
life
us
to
women
be
have
experienced
imposter
through us,
syndrome.
rather than
And I
running
don't think it
some
was
of the
modeled for me,
deeply
right?
rooted
I was
programs
the daughter
that
of
we
two
were taught.
W-2 employees.
And so
Yeah.
these,
And
I'm going to
Yep.
call them
No, it's a lot of
sound
people.
and
So I run
energy
some
instruments,
groups and individual coaching. And,
started to show up.
I hear a lot from
And
women,
what
the
we
imposter
noticed is
syndrome,
that
like,
we
am I
could
really worth it?
assist in
And then the other
helping
piece that I hear
transmute
is
some of
just
the
not having a
energy
safe space
in
to
our
practice the
stories
skills, to talk about it.
that are not
And the
about
other one I
love,
hear a lot
that
is,
are
I don't
more
want
based
people to
on
think I'm greedy.
fear
And I really
scarcity
do
and
think that's
programming.
more a gender
So it's like we
specific
could
concern,
create
not across the
space
board.
in
I know men that
ourselves and in
struggle
our
here too.
environments,
But somehow taking
for
care of
more
ourselves and putting
natural,
our needs in front of
decisions
others
to
because
be
we're not
made.
socialized to do so as
rather than the
women
triggered
becomes really
systemic
challenging. But once
decisions
you're
that
able to do
most
it in
of
a
us
way
make
that
every
is
day.
not only good for you,
And
but
so
good for
you
your
could almost
clients,
call
your
it like a
company,
heightened
I find that
intuitive
women
nature
get a
or
lot of pride and
heightened
confidence, and then we
innate
can kind of role
knowing.
model for the people
And
behind
there
us.
was
I
tools
mean, what's
and
coming up for
things
me
that
as
were
you're saying
starting to
that,
show
Kathleen, I
up
have
that could
a
help
friend
with that for
who
those that
writes a
wanted
lot
it.
about
And so
women
what
really using their
began
network, which you've
was
described,
just
and that
primarily
women
Bill,
are
and then
less
Bill and I, and then
comfortable
a few
seeing
others
relationships as
began to grow
transactional.
into a
Like
community,
that feels
a group
very
of people
negative to us.
who
And
were
it doesn't have to be a
also in
negative
alignment
thing
with
if through
change,
friendships you
and were
ask for help
leveraging
and
these
they ask
tools
for
in their
help,
own way
and yet men seem
to
much more interested
watch
in doing
how
that
they
than
could also do the
women
same.
are.
So
I also would
I
love
wouldn't
to see the
say
research, though,
we're
on
teaching,
men
but we're
broken
not.
down a bit.
It's
And
funny
I
you're
don't
bringing
know
that
if
up
this
because
is
we have a call
available.
this evening.
And what I
Because
mean
it's
is by
more of,
profession. So I know
a
I've
group of
worked with and
people
coached some
that are learning to
therapists
embody
who are male,
this
who
way
struggle,
of being and
with
supporting
asking
each
for what
other
they're
and,
worth because
having
they're in
some
this
fun
helping
and
profession.
making fun
I
when we
happen to be
don't,
married
and
to someone
making
who makes
light
a
of the
very
fact
decent
that,
living
whoops,
given
fear took
his
over again,
profession, but
and
is
control,
great at negotiating a car,
but really
but would
learning
never
to allow,
negotiate his
let go, and
salary.
surrender.
And so I do think it would be interesting to
the
break
way
it
you
down
talked about,
for
and then
profession,
driving
because I know the
change
men
from
that we
there.
tend to hang
So
out with, right,
I
tend to
would
be
say
in
it's
financial
more of a way
services,
of being,
at least,
a way of
initially
life
career
that many
wise.
of us weren't
And,
taught.
I think
And so we're kind of
that
doing it for
either they're all running around not
for
telling
each
the
other.
truth, or they
And
just happen to
how does
be,
this
they seem to be more comfortable
intersect
just
or
making that
differ
ask.
from
But I think relationship
mindfulness
selling is where it's
practices,
at. And
which
so
can
women are
also
really
sort
good at
of
that.
create,
So it
by
just becomes
creating
more
a
comfortable
witnessing
building the
character
numbers in at
can,
some point too.
can
Yes.
distance
And you did
ourselves
mention
from
that
there's a part of you that's always looking for
pattern.
change. And
I think they're very
what drew
similar
you to this
in intention.
this
in fact,
next
I
step
know they are.
of
I think a
your work?
mindfulness
I
practice
think that when it
encourages
comes
us
to
go into
charging for your
stillness,
true value, it's something that
become
I've really struggled
an
with,
observation
especially
of
when I started
ourselves,
my company in
which this
2008.
absolutely entails.
I went
I
through
think the
probably,
additional,
well,
I'm
first
going
when
to
you
say
start off a company,
benefit,
you're not making a
some of
lot
the
to begin
work
with,
that
just
we've
the
been
essence of
drawn to
the
do
nature of starting a company.
is that it
But then I went through a period of
bypasses the
time where I had
conscious
come from the
mind or the
counseling
egoic mind
profession. And so I was
to
speaking,
allow
writing books in the
the
counseling profession, and
more
obviously
natural
doing
unfolding.
counseling. And then to go into financial
Maybe in
services, the
some
numbers are
cases, not
vastly
all,
different.
a little
And
quicker
so
than
realizing
certain
that I was
practices can do.
undercharging, that I was under-earning,
And
that I was giving
so
too much
what we've
away,
been
that I
witnessing
felt I
is
had
when you can
imposter syndrome. Like,
combine
who is this
mindfulness
former therapist,
practices
former bank examiner
or other
to come in and,
concepts, right,
require
with
or
these
request this kind
sort
of
of
money? And I worked through
advanced,
it,
I'm going
and
to
I
call
worked through
them
it,
divine
with some
sciences.
help from
What
coaches.
we're
I
then
worked through it,
able to
learning more
do
about
is
money
help us
psychology.
embody
I've
those
taken courses and learned about
practices a little
negotiating.
deeper,
For my
a little
husband, he's
more
great at negotiating, like I
than
said,
for
other
some
than
of
his
us
salary. So I
than we
learned a
might
lot from him.
otherwise not
And
been
I
able
just
to do. I can't say
decided
that's true for
when
everyone.
the pandemic hit, where
That's
I'm
why we
at in my
called it
career.
experiment.
And I thought, what do
this
I
is
want
what
to
we're
spend
observing.
the
Thank
rest
you.
of my
And
career before I just
I'm
ski and
curious,
mountain bike
Andrea, I
all
have
the
a
time?
question.
Do it.
When you
And I
talk
thought,
about,
I want to really go back to my
surrendering
roots of
to
empowering
allow life
women,
to flow through,
helping
it's a
them
word
find
I'm
their voice,
certainly very
and doing
familiar
so
with.
in a way where
I'm
they can break
aware
money
that
silence.
when I
they
started
can
my
feel good about
surrendering
it,
process, if you
and
will,
I feel like
it
it's
came from
the
a place of
least I
pain,
can do
right?
to
It
give
came from a
back
place
to a
like
profession
this
that
is
has
not where
given
I
me so
want to
much.
be.
So beautifully said.
I can fight it, or I
So
can
I'm
surrender
going to ask you
to
a
it.
question,
So
which
it
you
sounds like that
alluded to when you said
resonates
what
with you.
isn't
Can
discussed
you
in
say more
families,
about that?
but
Yeah, no, very
over
much so. I
your
think sometimes
career
we
with
get
its many transitions,
pushed
Kathleen,
into
how has your
a
definition
corner
of
pain
financial success
before we
shifted?
realize that it's time to let
Interesting.
go of control.
You had mentioned Manisha
And that's not true for
before.
everyone
She has a new book out
by any
about
stretch
money
of the
zen and being enough.
imagination.
And one
But
of the
I genuinely
things that she
believe
writes
that we
in
were
there
not
is
intended
about
to
your
suffer.
definition of success.
And I sometimes
And what it resonated with
contemplate
me
the
when I
deeper
read it was
question
that
is,
it
do
can
we end up in a
change
place of
over
pain
time.
and suffering
And so certainly
when
how
we're
I
operating
describe
from
financial
that place
success
of
where I'm
control,
at this phase of my life is definitely
thinking that
different
we
for business financial success.
need to control
I
our
think
environments. And I
for
understand
me
why. I'll
now,
get you my
I
long
want to
list
go
of
deeper
how
with
I've
people.
done
I
that. I'm
certainly still
not
want to make a
speaking
good
from a
living. I
place I
want to practice
haven't
what I
done it.
preach. I
But
want to
when
be
we
able
can
to
start to
fund,
operate
all
from a
the skiing
place
that I want to do and
in
travel.
whatever form that
But
is
it
for
becomes
people,
less for me
to
about
operate from that place of
I have to
allowing
make
life
X
to flow
amount to
through
prove
us,
to
or love to
myself
flow through us,
that,
or whatever
you
that
know,
is.
I've made it in this
Then
profession,
I've
in this
often
job,
seen
in this
that that's
whatever.
when the pain
And
starts
more
to
of,
go away.
I want to make
Yes,
enough and be
I would
financially
agree.
successful
And
enough where I can
part of
enjoy
that
life. I
is,
can
you
have
know,
good
certainly
work-life balance, and I can do
Buddhist
work
terms,
that's
the
meaningful
second
to
arrow,
me.
right? The
And that
first arrow is life.
so the drive
which,
goes down a little bit,
you know,
and it
there's
goes
always
into
pain involved in a
really
full
thinking
life,
about and being very
then
purposeful
we
and I guess strategic
exacerbate
again
that
about
pain
where I'm going to
by
put my efforts.
resisting it.
I kicked and
This
screamed a little
shouldn't
bit when
be,
internally
this
I knew that
shouldn't
was a shift
happen
I
to
was making, but
me,
I've
it
finally
shouldn't be
caught up.
happening.
Having the
I
world
should
slow
have
down
gotten
for
that
a year or
job,
two
you know,
was
and
helpful in me
just
realizing it's okay to
opening
slow
to
down.
that.
I'm going to
And
survive. Yeah.
you
But
know,
that's a
it is
long-winded answer. I
this
really
is
think it does
this
shift and change over
is
time.
something
And
I've been
I would
saying
never put
recently.
my
You know,
definition of financial
this is
success on
life,
anybody else.
and the more
We
we
get to
open to it
decide
and
for
surrender
ourselves
to
what
it,
it means to be
the more
wealthy
we're
and to live a
able
wealthy
to
life. And
not
sometimes that's a lot of
abolish
zeros
pain,
after your net
but
worth. Sometimes it's
move
not.
through.
I do think as we
pain.
age,
So
it shifts,
you've
as
had
you
a
just
very
said to
interesting
yourself,
career
Kathleen.
journey.
That's why I
and
named my firm
continue
True Abundance
to have,
Advisors.
Andrea, and I'm wondering
because I
your
came to learn for
definition
myself
of,
that I was lucky enough to
success
have
and
a career
specifically
for 30
financial
years
success
that added a lot of
has
zeros to my
shifted
net
over
worth. And
these years.
I was pretty exhausted
success
and unhappy
for me is just living
towards
life.
the end of those
wow.
30
No.
years because I had very little time.
That's why nobody is
and
more surprised than
very
I
little
when
energy.
the concept
Just
of a
sapped
PhD
the
in
energy out
conscious
of me to
business
be
ethics showed
on a
up,
trading
because
desk at 7
I
a.m.
was
with
like,
people
is
whose
this me
politics
trying to
and values
succeed
I
again?
didn't share.
It's a great question.
And so I think as we age, we
I
realize
really had
that
to question
energy
it,
and time
but
is not unlimited.
it's not. It's
And we
more
start to
about
question the
me allowing
trade-offs.
and enjoying my
And
life. And
I also
enjoy
want to acknowledge that it's not
I
easy.
enjoy the
It's really not
exploration.
easy
I
to
enjoy
step
the
off.
writing, all
It's
that
not
kind
even
of
a
stuff.
treadmill because
So
it's of our own making
that's what
that
success has
we are
become to
always
me.
pushing and
anytime
always
I
doing.
try
And
to
it can be a bit of
stick my
an
head
addiction,
in and
even at some
achieve
point.
anything.
Well, I also think,
'Cause
I mean, there's
let's
a
be
couple of
clear,
things.
I've
One
still
is,
got
first
that
of all, what a
part of me.
trailblazer
Then
you
it
were
goes
to be a woman of Wall
sideways,
Street before
and
that was
I'm
trendy.
reminded that if I let go,
Still isn't trendy,
what
if you
I
know what I'm
think
saying.
success
But that is impressive.
should be,
And
then
also,
naturally
I think the type of
success
people
will
that chances
follow
are we
me.
are, that we had that
Because
drive to
it
do,
exceeds
to
my
be women in a
current
male-dominated
limited thinking
industry and to kind of
capacity
push forward
to
and
know
change things.
what success should be.
Personality-wise, I do think it's hard to
And
shift
if I can say
gears.
anything in
But
hindsight,
boy, isn't
that
it great
is
once you
now
figure out how to
a
shift it
body
a
of
little.
truth that I'm
You
living.
through mindfulness,
And so
me,
it
it's
doesn't mean I
nature,
don't
getting out
dream, and I
in
don't
nature,
like, we're gonna have
whatever
a
the
call
season
Friday and
really
think of the
helps me
wildest
appreciate and slow
possible things
down
we
and
could do,
enjoy.
but it's not
I plan on
hingent
being here
on
for a really long time, but
success
enjoy,
anymore.
you know,
It's
every day of
gone
my life.
back to living,
That's beautifully
experiencing,
said.
dreaming.
And I hope to get as much
Which is a very
skiing in as it
different
sounds like you're
space
able to get
be
in
operating
over
from.
the course
It
of a
doesn't mean
year.
you don't
Yes,
dream
we
and
talked
wanna
about
create and
education
all
being
those
a
great
value.
things,
Skiing is also a
but there's
value
no
in my
true
family.
definition of success. I think it goes back to what I think you said it at the beginning, is
So
that
as we get to
we've
the end
already
of our time
succeeded if
together,
you
is there
can
anything else you'd
recognize
like to
that
share share with
You're
our
just
listeners?
living and loving and
I just think if
choosing from
you
there.
if in your
There's no
heart you
operating
know
system
something
or
to be
agenda that we
true,
have to
I think
achieve. That's,
listen to it,
probably the largest
figure out
mistruth I
how
see on the
to
planet at the
honor
moment.
that.
So
And even
that's
though
the
it may
first
not be
question.
clear as
And
to
now I
what
would
the end
say
result's
for
going to
me,
be, just
success
trust your
in
gut and go
finance is
for it.
allowing it to flow.
Because I really think that has
So what does
made
that mean?
my career and my life
That
very
means
interesting.
really
And my hope is
trusting
it
and
would do the same for
understanding
others.
that,
And I guess
you know,
I'd like
as
to
I
encourage our
need
listeners
things,
to
that the
listen to
finance
your
is there.
podcast.
And
And
when
the name of your
there's
podcast
an
again is
overabundance
Breaking
of
Money
finance,
It's
that
Breaking
I
Money
am to
Silence,
allow it
like
to
most
flow,
podcasts. It can be found
which is a
at
very
all
different,
different places.
balance sheet,
My
right,
biggest
than,
giggle is when I
we're
ask Siri
taught.
for it or
But
Alexa
what
for
I've
it, 'cause
come
it comes
to
on.
realize
But you
is
can go
we
to
all have a certain
breakingmoneysilence.com
amount
and all
of,
the
let's call
episodes
it,
are right there.
That's
financial
great.
need.
And I know you
within
also
our
mentioned
lives,
that you
and
have
that I
a-
always ask people,
a
how much
checklist.
money do you
It's
need
not
to
a
feel
checklist
safe?
available, but
It doesn't mean that
52
money
money
makes you
talk
feel safe,
tips
okay?
on the
But
homepage
there
of
is a
your
certain
of Breaking
amount
Money
of
Silence. Is
lifestyle
that
that
where it is?
people
Yep.
want.
If you
But is
want
that
a little
egoically
paragraph or a
driven
little tip
by
a
what
week
you
on how to
think
break
you
money silence,
need
how to talk about money,
versus what
you just go onto the homepage,
actually
sign up. It's a
need
free
to make you
campaign
happy.
for
And not
financial
that it makes you
advisors. They
happy,
get a
but that's
slightly
the best
different one.
language I
So if
can
that is
give.
who you are, check
And that's
that.
going to
If
vary
you
for
are a
different
woman in
people.
business or someone in,
Right?
that is not a
Some
financial
people
advisor,
are really
just click
happy
woman in business,
with,
and you will get a more
$10,000 in the
consumer
bank
friendly
and
one. And it's just a
living,
way of giving back
off the
and
land
hopefully
and moving
getting us
from
talking
location to
more about
location.
money in our lives.
So there
Such
is no
an important thing to be
there is
doing.
no one
Thank you
size
so
fits
much
all,
for
but
being
that's
my
not
guest, Kathleen.
what we're
I love the
showing
work that you're
traditionally
doing,
most people
and
right
it's
now.
so clear that it's
And so when you talk about
mission
relationship
for
with
you.
finance,
So
I think it's
thank you for
extremely
sharing that
personal.
today.
And I think it's extremely important for people to figure that out for themselves. Not
I hope you enjoyed
fall
my
to the
conversation
victim
with Kathleen
of
Burns
believing it needs to
Kingsbury,
be a certain
founder
way
of
with the
KBK
retirement
Wealth Connection.
accounts and the
And some
multi-million
things I
dollar
took
house
away I'd like
and
to share with
all
you.
that stuff
First
that
thing
may
is
not be true
spend time
for
with
many
your partner
people.
talking about
it's
what you're
funny
thinking and
because,
feeling about money.
when I did shift and
So many of
surrender
us
and all
in
those
partnerships
things,
just fall
I never
into
thought
our
we'd
roles,
own a house
and we don't
again,
really think about how we want to
transparency.
do this thing
And so
called
now
money.
I'm sitting in this
Talk
adorable
about
little
it with
home
each other,
on a river.
learn
and
from
this
each
year,
other,
I never thought I'd own a boat
and most
again.
of all,
and it wasn't
don't
because I
judge
was
each
striving
other.
for it, right?
Another
But these were
takeaway
things that
is
make
bust
me happy.
through your
And so I
money
didn't put it into a
taboos.
budget, which is
Many
funny
of us
coming
were
from
taught
accountant.
not to talk about money,
I didn't put it on
not
my
to talk
success
about our
checklist.
thoughts and feelings,
I
our
just
attitudes
allowed
towards
life
wealth.
to flow through me.
But more and more,
And so my
we're coming to
belief is
believe
we
that
can do the
society
same with
would be
finance. In
healthier
fact, I know
if we
we can.
talked more openly
And this is
about
one
money.
of the things that I've learned.
And finally,
when I talk about money, and
notice if you're
financial
struggling
success,
with imposter
is
syndrome.
allowing that aspect
A
of our
part
lives
of
to
being
flow
empowered
through us
and
as well.
finding your voice
Thank you
around
for
money
that answer, Andrea.
is
And
negotiating to be
what I
paid
heard
what
about
you're worth.
when you talked about
Kathleen
your
noticed in
shifted
herself when she started
definition
her
of
business
success
that she was
you
undercharging
do
and
aspire.
under-earning. She worked it
and
through,
you also
consulting
don't
with
want to be
coaches
attached
and
to
taking
the outcome.
courses, and she's
It's
now
one thing
excited
have
to
an
help other
aspiration.
women
It's another thing
become
again
better
to cling
negotiators.
to that aspiration.
Are you
working
enjoying this
out.
podcast?
And another thing
forget
that
to
I'd like to
subscribe so
add
you won't
to
miss
your
next
comment
week's
that
episode.
financial
And if you're
success
loving
or
the show,
financial
I'd really
comfort is
appreciate
different
a
from
rating and a
everyone.
review.
It's also different
Thank you
different
so
parts of our
much.
lives and different times of our lives, right? You and I have raised children, and you need more financial resources when you're sending them to school and sending
Thanks
them
for
to
listening
camp
to
and
Making
paying for
Change
their
with Your
activities
Money.
and paying for their
Certified
clothes
financial
and paying for
planner
their
Laura
food.
Rotter
And I
specializes in helping
certainly
people just like
was
you
able
organize, clarify, and invest their money
I'll
in
use
order
the
to
term
support a
financial
life
freedom,
of purpose
the
and
freedom
meaning.
I have now
Go
to define
to
abundance as much in terms of being in control of my time and my energy, in addition
for a
to
free
having a
resource
business.
to help you on your
And
journey.
I was able to do that once my children were off the
Disclaimer,
payroll.
please remember that the
And
information shared
so
by this podcast
what I'm
does
able
not
to do
constitute
financially is
accounting,
very
legal,
different now
tax,
that
investment, or financial
my
advice.
children are
It's for
independent.
information purposes
And that
only.
my
You
worldview
should
has
seek
shifted,
appropriate
which I think
professional
happens to
advice
all of
for
us
your
as we
specific
age.
information.
So as we get to the end of this conversation, Andrea, is there any service that you and Bill are currently offering to others that you'd want to talk talk about, and no worries if it's not fully developed yet.
Oh, absolutely. We're running the easiest things that people can access is using sound and some very advanced energy systems called biofeedbacks, along with group intention to help people let go of some of the limiting patterns in the subconscious mind. And so, for example, we're running one called the Love Experiment starting this weekend, where a group of people come together with a common intention and a common affirmation. And then we just use the sound and frequency technologies that we've self-developed or been gifted or guided with other organizations to create an environment where people can use them simply and easily to help them let go and move into the space more and more of what we're talking about today.
And are these available online, or do you need to be?
No, they're online completely. Even the call this evening, there's people from different parts of the globe. So they're easy to use and they're extremely accessible, especially because most people have cell phones now, which didn't exist 20 years ago. And so they're simple, they're easy, and they're on the challenges page of our website, mycw.ca. And so we host them once a month or once every couple of months. And then we have connection calls in between so people can get to know each other.
Sounds wonderful. I will be sure to put the link in the podcast notes. And our listeners, I would say by and large, are women around 50 years old, or give or take, going through a life transition. Would you say that this could be helpful for them? Is there a specific group of people that you target?
Yeah, I would say primarily our audience is women. That's not uncommon. They tend to be the drivers of change, which is amazing. And I would say the women who are seeking clarity, deeper states of change, and within themselves, and the possibility of even changing some of the trajectory of their future for the next 20 to 25 years, then it might be worth coming to play and connect, because even one little shift to the left can change the next 20, 25 years of our lives. And to me, that's significant, because it gives us an opportunity to live deeper and more nurturing lives in a way that resonates for ourselves rather than what we've been told.
So beautifully said. I know both you and I have been through significant changes in our lives, and we can speak to the fact that the most important change doesn't come from what's outside of us, but from what's inside of us, and just shifting our perspective through different technologies. Thank you, Andrea, for being my guest. This has been really thought-provoking.
Thank you. Really, really grateful. Glad we connected.
I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Andrea Leigh Austin, and I'd like to share some of my takeaways. First of all, find something you love and then express that love to others. Andrea found that she loved to take things that people are afraid of or they're in fear of and show them and teach them the joy. As she reflects back, Andrea believes this is why she enjoyed teaching people to swim and why she loved teaching tax more than practicing as an accountant. My second takeaway: learn to listen and follow the voice inside you. Andrea chose not to follow the traditional CPA path of partnership or CEO or CFO position. Something inside her knew it wasn't the right path for her. Instead, after having her first child, she started overseeing administration and operations for KPMG, which is how she spent the last 7 years of her 22-year career with that firm. And finally, take time to explore new possibilities. Andrea hit a point in her career when she knew something had to shift. After working out the financial implications with her husband, She arranged a year sabbatical from her job and started experimenting with different roles and different ideas. In her words, she gave herself permission to start looking at the world differently. Instead of returning to KPMG, Andrea has been on a path of helping herself and others create a life from love rather than from the typical fear and scarcity consciousness that runs so deeply in our society. Are you enjoying this podcast? Please don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss next week's episode. And I'd really appreciate a rating and a review if you're enjoying it so other people can find it. Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to Making Change with Your Money. Certified financial planner Laura Rotter specializes in helping people just like you organize, clarify, and invest their money in order to support a life of purpose and meaning. Go to www.TrueAbundanceAdvisors.com/workbook for a free resource to help you on your journey. Disclaimer, please remember that the information shared by this podcast does not constitute accounting, legal, tax, investment, or financial advice. It's for information purposes only. You should seek appropriate professional advice for your specific information.